Welcome to Gamecock Pod Live.
For the next 3 to 4 years, I'll be committed to the University of South Carolina.
This is Rodgers again to the 25, 20, 15, 10. Rodgers scores! Jackie Bradley Jr. delivers for the Gamecocks. Lost it up, looking for Kelly. Touchdown! Can you believe it?
And South Carolina is sending shockwaves through the SEC.
Frederick plays it in at the buzzer. That's a win! Unbelievable! I don't believe it!
And now, live from Studio 54 of the Gamecock Pod Studios, here's the Cockfather himself, Keith Alsep.
All right, everybody, welcome into National Signing Day. Christmas 3 weeks early, usually. Alex Jones is going to join us. Today is episode number 1902, and today's show is powered by Prize Picks. It's the holiday season, the best time of year for sports. Bowl games, basketball matchups, NFL, playoff pushes. It's all happening all at once. And while you and I are out here making decisions every day, what are we getting somebody for Christmas? What are we cooking for Christmas dinner? What were we cooking for Thanksgiving? What games are we watching? There's one place where it feels good to be right, and that is Prize Picks. So let me tell you, Prize Picks is available in 45 states, including this great state of South Carolina. Okay, the app is easy to download. All you have to do is go in the Google or Apple store, depending on what your operating system is for your phone. If you have an iPhone, it's the Apple Store. If it's Google, it's the Play Store. You just download Prize Picks. Setting up your account is easy. And then all you have to do is pick more or less. College football, NFL, NBA, it's all going on Prize Picks. So sign up today. All right, let me give you a new feature alert for Prize Picks. Prize Picks now has early payouts. If your lineup gets off to a hot start, you may have the option to cash out on those winnings before the games even finish. Okay, on Prize Picks, if you want flexibility, just choose the flex play, where you can get paid even if one of your picks misses. And if you want the biggest payouts, go for the power play. No matter how you play, Prize Picks is a great way to put your takes to the test. I mean, I love the simplicity. It's straightforward. Josh Allen, you just pick more or less passing yards, more or less touchdown passes, more or less rushing yards or rushing touchdowns. Now, Prize Picks even has stacks where you can take Josh Allen like I have all year long, and you can take all three of those if you want to. Okay, Prize Picks is simple to play. Again, just pick more or less on at least 2 player stats. And if you get your picks paid, or if your picks are right, you get paid. So download the Prize Picks app today and use code GAMECOCKS to get $50. That's right, $50 after you make your first $5 play. Okay, if you only want to put 20 or 25 bucks in your account and you want to test it out and you make a $5 play, even if you miss you're going to get $50 added into your Prize Picks account. So download the Prize Picks app today. Start making your picks. Use the code Gamecocks to get $50 in lineups. That's code Gamecocks to get $50 in lineups after you make your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks. It's good to be right. All right, let's bring in the pride of Hampton County, and that is Alex Jones. Alex, I thought we'd be finished. My man, the Silver Fox, is in the chat box. What's up, Big John up in Dallas? That's my guy. He's a straight shooter. He's a big baller and a shot caller. That's my guy. And so are you, Alex. Welcome in. And so, Alex, give us the latest. As of 12:06 Eastern, what is the latest on guys that are in the boat? We can talk about guys remaining, and now there are going to be perhaps multiple players that will be waiting until tomorrow to make their announcement.
Yeah, so first of all, good to be back with you. Right now, since the start of the morning, there's 8 signed letter of intents in. That's Darius Gray, Noah Clark, Cassie Barnes, Zion Giles, Keenan Brick, KJ Johnson, Anthony Baxter, and Caden Ramsey are the ones who are signed right now. And of the commitments right now, there are still 6 out there who haven't been any paperwork in. But, with a few of these guys, some of them have afternoon kind of signing ceremonies, things like that. So I think, the Harris twins have posted something about a 3:30 kind of sign-in time. So could be one where, Shane Beamer has his press conference at 2, and maybe they go ahead and get the paperwork in. They just have kind of like that public type of ceremony at their school. I think Currents may be in kind of that same situation too. So we'll see on those guys. And I think Tristan Lewis, that's another one where I think, Greenwood may be having a sign-in ceremony on Thursday, tomorrow, but he could also be another one where maybe the paperwork is in before Beamer's press conference today.
All right, so last night it kind of got dicey with Landon Duckworth, and then he just told Chad Simmons, I'm shutting it down. I'm going to South Carolina. Now, this morning, his paperwork is not in. Shea Dixon and Steve Wiltfong have entered crystal ball flips or RPM flips, whatever they are on Rivals for LSU. But he has not signed. At one point, he thought he may wait until Thursday to sign. What's the latest you're hearing on Landon Duckworth? Because to me, with the uncertainty of Lenore Sellers, with the inexperience of everybody else, even including Duckworth, I thought he was really critical because he continues, even if you get one more year of Sellers, which we all hope we do. And by the way, for the people that want Lenore Sellers to transfer, just turn this channel off right now because you are not going to like what I'm about to say about you because you are nuts. You're out of your mind if you want Lenore Sellers to go someplace else next year. But Duckworth, the top dual threat quarterback in the country, an Elite 11 guy, and a guy that has been committed to South Carolina off and on since before his sophomore year of high school. What's the latest on Landon Duckworth?
Yeah, it's something we're tracking here. I thought maybe could see it come through in the morning from his paperwork, but the paperwork still isn't in on Duckworth. When LSU hired Lane Kiffin, I wondered if LSU would try to get back into the mix just because when you think about Duckworth's recruitment, Ole Miss and Lane Kiffin were one they were making a push there at one time, and that kind of died down a little bit and became a South kind of Auburn type of thing, and then obviously South kind of won out with his commitment. But I wondered if LSU and Lane Kiffin would try to make a run, and seems like they are making a run right now, and that's kind of the latest that we're having right now. I don't think it's over one side or the other, but I think it's both teams are kind of battling out to see for this one.
Okay, so I'm going to ask you about, so there were multiple flip targets. Okay, I can tell you 2 of them are off the board. P.J. Dean. Alex, it seems like P.J. Dean is just the hot girl in high school that's always flirting with you, but every time you ask her to go out, she's got something going on, but I still want to go out with you. And it's just kind of like the ultimate tease. He teased us again this weekend. They spent the night in Columbia. He signed with Georgia first thing this morning. Tamari Watkins from Rock Hill, he signed with Texas A&M. Now there's two of the other two of those flip candidates are now set to sign tomorrow, and that is Dutch Fork, four-star defensive end Julian Walker, whose dad is the assistant strength coach at South Carolina, Jamil Walker, and for it's Michigan and South Carolina there. And four-star running back Carson Baker, it looked like he was going to be set probably to flip to South Carolina today. But then Florida got back in touch with him. Mike Lombardi, who's the GM at North Carolina, spent all of football season in Saudi Arabia raising money. That's no joke. He did for UNC football. And they are in it heavily now, and now Texas A&M has come back in, and now John Summerall at Florida's back in. It's a 4-team race, and he's deciding tomorrow. I don't even know what to think anymore. I thought as of Sunday this was probably a done deal, and now I mean, it's like north, south, east, or west. You're at a crossroads and nobody knows which way. It's what you're watching the movie. The guy's pulled up at the stop sign. You don't know which way he's going. I mean, what are you hearing on Carson Baker?
Pretty much the same as you. Coming out of that official visit, it felt like South Carolina maybe had the lead, maybe at the very least has some momentum in this recruitment heading into signing day. And now it seems like it's a kind of a 4-team race. South Carolina's in it. North Carolina was kind of, even with South Carolina had some momentum coming out of the official visit. North Carolina was kind of the team to watch with them. You can see they could be cutting out of those two. But as you mentioned, Florida's trying to get back into it with Summerall. Texas A&M is going to make a run, and so we'll see. I think it's just kind of one of those that maybe it could change heading into the night, and could have a lot of different twists and turns in this one heading into Thursday, his signing day. And then with Walker, I still feel like this one's really close. Like he took the visit this past weekend to the game to see Michigan, and I think that was a visit that he wanted to take just for the family to see it. And I still think this one's very close. You mentioned the connection with his dad on staff, and still think this one's close. And both of those ones are going to be heavily tracked here going into their signings tomorrow.
I mean, I will say this. I wonder how they felt shivering in the freezing snowstorm in Ann Arbor in November when it was 55 degrees and sunny in Columbia, while South Carolina was unfortunately getting their asses handed to them by Clemson. I mean, I could see this one going either way. It seems like family, though, is really the most important thing here. I don't know if that's true or not. I know certainly going 4-8 has not helped South Carolina with anybody. And if Duckworth is the only guy you lose, I think whoever you probably hire as OC, you just let them bring their quarterback in to compete with Sellers. I mean, iron sharpens iron at the end of the day. If he doesn't like it, I mean, I don't know. But back to Walker, I mean, how big of a pickup would it be if South Carolina is able to add both him and Carson Baker, or just either one of them? Speak to the talent level of each of these two guys.
Yeah, Julian Walker's a guy that's kind of been an interesting recruitment from his standpoint. He was, maybe a little bit off the radar coming into the season, and kind of heading into the spring, into the summer, really started to go on the radar, and just a really good player. I mean, at his size, can move really well. A guy that, you can see from the junior to senior film continues to get better. And I mean, just for that spot, I think it'd be huge. You always want to build those line of scrimmage spots, and that's a spot that's going to also be interesting from a transfer portal perspective, how they use it. But I mean, a guy like that's in your backyard at Dutch Fork High School, it's a guy you want to have because he's really talented and kind of fits the mold of what they look for at that spot with his size and his speed and things like that. And then with Carson Baker, a guy that's just kind of got that home run threat from a speed perspective with what he can do at running back. And I think he's been one that's also, when you kind of compare some junior and senior films, you see some things that he's improved on from maybe just getting downhill a little bit more in those tight yard situations. But guy that can't doubt the speed on him with some of his track numbers. He's kind of that home run threat type of guy, and a really, really good running back that's really been on top of South Carolina's recruiting board for a while. Like I remember talking to him at March or February at Carrollton High School at the Under Armour event, and South Carolina was right there at the top of their board with Carson Baker, and he had Texas A&M there, you had Georgia still there, Ohio State, in some of those schools, but South Carolina's been right there, and I think they're going to try to close the door. But he's a really, really good running back.
He is, and I mean now I've seen 6'2", 200, and a guy that ran 10.6 as a junior in high school.
He can
I
move.
mean, look, that's not Nick Harbor, but that's a home run threat. I mean, that's essentially the same guy. And maybe this is even you're too young to remember, but Todd Gurley, same guy, 6'2", 200. A lot of people thought he was a safety. He went to Georgia, and we all know what he did in the NFL.
And
but I mean, go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, he's a guy, when I mentioned seeing him in person, last time I saw him in person was March, but he was a guy that you knew had that speed, but you saw him in person. You can see the frame that he has. Like, he can continue to build on that frame. There's a lot of more room for growth from a muscle standpoint, things like that, which, once you get into a college program, you can keep that speed, but also grow that into that muscle. And I think he has the frame to do that.
Yeah, so Julian Walker, he's just continued to rise up the boards. I know the guys at Rivals, Charles Powers, a guy I really have a lot of respect for. He's got both Julian Walker and Zion. Is it back to Giles now, or is it Giles? I mean,
Giles.
I keep hearing it. I thought it was Giles. I thought it was Giles. Then when he committed, I thought it was Giles. Then I heard somebody calling him Giles, but he's got both of those guys teetering on the brink of 5-star status on Rivals. And Zion, we're just going to call him Giles until somebody figures it out. He is Rivals' #1 interior offensive lineman, even though I think he could be a right tackle.
Yeah.
And Darius Gray is 24/7 Sports #1 interior offensive lineman. And so Anthony Baxter is the only other offensive lineman in the class. He's a 3-star, a big bodied guy to South Point. But I think when you look at the size of the O-line group, and two guys are basically #1 at their position by the two major recruiting services, I think there's a lot to like there. You know why? It's because South Carolina absolutely sucked at offensive guard this year and at center, except when Nolan Hay played, which was about 1.5 games. And Nick Sharp's already entered the portal. Bye, Nick. We're not going to miss you. You couldn't block my 12-year-old daughter. I'm sorry.
Go back to what you mentioned with Zion. Like, I think he's a guy that the versatility is what stands out about him and where he can play. Like, obviously, listed as an interior offensive lineman, but I like what you said. Like, I think he's got some tackle in him. You saw that with Shed Surratt this year. I mean, he was a guy that played right tackle at the end of the year, but he was a guy, I think, coming out of high school with Shed, you saw some of the interior stuff, but you also were intrigued by what he could do at tackle. And you saw some of that this year, but he played both spots. Interesting to see kind of how Darius Gray fits in there from an interior offensive line spot. But Zion, his versatility, he's a guy that I've always been pretty high on. Just you watch his film and it really flashes too. He's an aggressive. You see like guys are moving when he's blocking them. Like I think he's a guy, just his versatility, just something that's helped him kind of continue to rise the recruiting rankings, just because I think there's a lot of, just different spots he can play that you think that he can really play well at.
No doubt. So a couple of other positions really stand out to me. And number one is the secondary, because I'm pretty sure you and I had this conversation. I had this conversation with Hale and others. When I watched Koski Barnes junior film and I saw the size, I mean, I felt just like I did about Jalen Kilgore. He was a 3-star guy. And I'm like, Koski Barnes, when people see the senior film, he is going to be a high 4-star guy. Well, the senior film came out. He went from an 88 to a 94, which I think may still be too low. But he is a dude, okay? And
yeah.
Jazavian Currents is a dude. He could play anywhere. He could play wide receiver. He could be a nickel. He could be a safety. The number one player in the state of South Carolina. I mean, probably the highest upside guy in the secondary out of South Carolina since Stephon Gilmore, honestly. Maybe the same kind of guy. A lot of people thought he was a safety. In fact, he was ranked the number one safety and then wound up playing corner, of course, and at one point was the NFL's number one rated and highest paid corner.
Yeah, we'll start with Koski Barnes. Like, he's one that, if I'm listing my, under the radar favorite prospect in this class, he may be it, just because of everything that you mentioned. Like, he was a guy that, I remember when he first kind of came on the radar for South Carolina with an offer, I kind of didn't know too much about him and went and watched his film and looked at his size. I was like, okay, well, I see exactly what they see in him. Like, first, he's 6'2", has the Torian Gray look for a corner. And I've seen him in person a few times now, and he's got that arm length that those guys like a Judge Collier has. Like, there's a little bit of similarities there to Judge Collier with the arm length. But then he also, he does some things where you can see, I think he's played some special teams as like a returner or so, but he's also played some receiver as a junior, which that shows you ball skills and things like that you have to have as a cornerback. But he's a guy that, to go along with the ball skills and the things he can do at corner from hips being fluid and things like that, he also is physical. Like, he'll come up and he'll play the run at the line of scrimmage. He'll blitz in the backfield and get after the quarterback. You'll see him be physical with blockers on the perimeter and get off blocks and make plays. So, guy that, I was a little surprised that it took this long for him to rise the rankings the way he did, because he took a big jump up for 24/7 in these latest rankings, and pretty deservedly so, because he's had a really good senior year. I mean, he at Grimsley, they're coming off a state championship last year, and they're playing Weddington tomorrow, actually, in the semifinals, which is Aiden Harris and Andrew Harris's school. So those guys are going for another state championship, and that's something Shane Beamer talks about that they look for as winners and things like that. So he's in a good program, but a guy that's just a really good player. That's exactly what they look for at cornerback with Torian Gray. And then with Jazavian Currents, I mean, it's, enough said with him. Like, he's a guy that's just really, really good. And same things you kind of talk about with Koski Barnes, you can talk about with Currents, just from a physical standpoint. Absolutely looks the part of what they look for. See a little bit of from a size perspective, some Nick Emenwari type things coming out of high school. But he's another one that he just plays the game really hard. Like, he's a guy that he can do everything that you need to do in the secondary, but he'll also come up and hit you at the line of scrimmage. Like, he'll come up into the box and play the run. But also, again, some of the things talked about with Koski Barnes, he'll go on the other side of the ball, and he's had a terrific year at quarterback this year. I mean, I remember seeing him in the first game they played Huff High School at Bank of America Stadium, and he didn't start at quarterback, but then after about the second half or so, they put him in at quarterback, and it's been the rest is history from there. And I can't remember his stats right now, but it's really, really good stats. And just, I think the best way to describe him is just a ball player, the guy that can do it all. The game comes natural to him. Has really good instincts. And a guy that I think could come in and, he's got a leadership qualities too, or just something I think you see in this class. There's some guys who can bring that leadership quality. But specifically with Currents, I wonder what his impact can be in year one. We'll see kind of how that safety room turns out early on, but I think he's definitely a guy that you're going to watch for on special teams, on kickoff return and things like that. He could be a really good gunner on punt, I think, but a guy that I think is going to have a chance to make a big impact in year one, either be it special teams or maybe defensively if things work out his way.
I agree. And, Tristan Lewis, quarterback at Greenwood, another big, tall, physical guy. And then KJ Johnson as well. Okay, so that's 4 guys in the secondary and just tremendous athletes, right? And then you look at a guy like Caden Ramsey, and who's a hell of an athlete, and Saquel Patterson, who's a phenomenal athlete who reclassified. A lot to like about the athleticism, at some of these skill positions.
Yeah,
obviously Duckworth would be, if he signs.
Yeah, and Tristan Lewis will start with him. Like, he's 6'3.5", 200 pounds, and interested to kind of see when he signs what his listed weight is from South Carolina. But I hate to keep saying it, but same things we talked about with Kasi Barnes and Xavier Currents, just an athlete, and that's things you see on both sides of the ball. He can do it too, and guy's a really good baseball player too. So there's some athleticism there, and it's just kind of one of these under the radar, coming out of nowhere finds that South Carolina's really had under Torian Gray. I mean, Nick Murray, DQ Smith, guys like that came out of nowhere that became multi-year starters for South Carolina, and it seems like Tristan Lewis can kind of be right on that path as well. And then maybe one of the most interesting players just from a production standpoint in this class is Caden Ramsey. A guy that they kind of turned the heat up on in the summer, and guy that he puts up some crazy stats for Cross these past 2 years. Guy that's got I can't remember the exact numbers, but double-digit interceptions. It seems like both his junior and senior year defensively. So that's one thing. It shows ball skills, shows instincts. I think his game can translate really well at tight end, being at that 6'5" range, 203 pounds, like a guy that I think speed-wise can fit in really well at tight end. But then also I think he's a guy that when you look at his potential for the future, a guy that can be really good in the red zone for South Carolina. Kind of like you saw last year, Michael Smith being used with some of those things. Like, he's not as big as Michael Smith, but I think Caden Ramsey can be a guy that wants to get into that college weight room and things like that, can be a real threat in the red zone.
No doubt about it. So the other position I really like is defensive tackle. Noah Clark. That was absolutely a tremendous get. He is signed, sealed, and delivered. The Harris twins. Aiden Harris will grow into a defensive tackle. Probably going to have to wait on him a little bit. And then his brother, Andrew Harris, who's listed as a linebacker. I think he could be one of these hybrid stand-up guys like Bam Martin Scott was. Maybe he grows into an edge. Who knows? But adding defensive tackles from the high school ranks and in the transfer portal and next month is going to be critical for South Carolina. The good news is you hope Gabriel Brownlow-Dendy comes back. Troy Pikes, phenomenal game against Clemson. And then you redshirted 3 guys that you signed. Xavier Hardy, the number 1 JUCO in the country. Okay, Caleb Williams was probably going to play and then broke his leg in practice. I don't know how that happens, but guys get rolled up on. And then Christian Ingram, who, 6'6", 310 pounds. You beat Southern Cal, Michigan, and others for him. Georgia offered Caleb Williams after he committed. And Hardy was the number 1 JUCO in the country. He had offers from everybody.
Yeah, and starting with Aiden Harris real quick, they actually just announced that he has signed to Gamecock football, just tweeted that out. So he has signed, and I think, kind of going back to what you said, he's a guy that, I think can be pretty dynamic on the interior. I think, Traven Robinson, those guys identified him early, and he's a guy that, really intrigued to see because he and his brother have been very, very productive at Weddington these past years. And guy that he's really quick for his size, can move really well, and on the interior kind of fits exactly what you think those interior D tackles were 2 years ago with T.J. Sanders, Tonka Hemingway, and those guys. A guy that's really productive and really intrigued to see another guy that once you get into that college room, what he can be.
No doubt about it. So that's 9. I think we can assume Andrew will probably be next to be announced. And then, like you said, Currents, Lewis, and Patterson are this afternoon. Now, yesterday, Hale McGranahan said to keep an eye on newly minted 4-star Woodland High School defensive end, Jamin Pinckney. He visited South Carolina unofficially for the Oklahoma game. He's 6'5", about 220. He'd been committed to USF. Alex Golish just left and went to Auburn, so you probably got to look at them. He also visited Florida State. They're in it. And South Carolina, he is announcing at 4:00 today. Any indication on how that one could go for South Carolina?
We'll see. I'm not, to be honest, I'm not 100% sure there. I think he's got some options. Like, I get the feeling maybe it won't be USF. I'm not sure if he's going to stick around there. Actually, speaking of USF, that's an interesting hire they made today.
Brian Hartline.
Yeah,
yes.
I think that could really work out. That a guy that's a really good recruiter, guy that get down to South Florida and Tampa and recruit in that area. That could be interesting to watch. I'm not sure South Florida is going to go anywhere, but I digress on that. But it's something that we'll continue to watch. Like maybe not as hard as we could be watching, but I mean we'll see on that one around 4:00. I think he's got a few different options that could go there.
All right, so Zion Ely looks like he's sticking with Maryland. His school, their ceremony starts at 1:00 Eastern. Any hope at all, or would that just be out of the blue if he didn't?
You said with Zion Ely, is that what you said?
Yeah.
I think that was one that we would have been kind of tracking even more if Maryland had moved on from Mike Locksley. I think that was a big key there. But Mike Locksley's going to sound like get another year, got a vote of confidence from the athletic department. So I think that's kind of we'll still be watching, but I don't think it's. I just get the feeling it's going to be Maryland still.
All right, good stuff. All right, so South Carolina wrapped up their season on Saturday with a very disappointing loss to Clemson. Another one-score game in the fourth quarter. South Carolina's knocking on the door to take the lead with a touchdown and an extra point. Just a totally bogus interception call. ACC officials, I'm not blaming them for the loss, but they certainly didn't help. Because, Alex, there were about 4 or 5 plays in that game that just were absolutely brutal, plus the fact that the guy had his arm around Brian Thomas Jr.'s neck the entire game, every single play. They didn't flag him, but maybe once. And so Shane Beamer's got at least two openings to fill on the offensive staff, primarily offensive coordinator. I don't know if Sean Elliott will be the offensive line coach, tight ends coach, or whether I think a lot of it's going to depend on who the OC is. And honestly, Shane Beamer last year could have essentially hired almost anybody in the country. This year it's a different story, and to get the right guy, they may say, look, I want to have full autonomy over my staff. I've got options, and you're 4-8. Hell, you may not be here after next, midway through the season. So, John David Baker was a name that was mentioned early. I mean, I will say this, and I know it's contrary to some information posted on the Big Spur. I had two sources say that there was essentially, he was the guy they were waiting, and then all the stuff happens with Lane Kiffin going to LSU. Ole Miss immediately promotes Golding. He's got a chance to go back there. I couldn't blame him. You keep hearing all these guys, their name ends in B. Cade Bell, Jason Beck, Kendall Briles, Jonathan Brewer, who is coaching this weekend in the ACC championship game. And even if Duke wins, they're not going to the college football playoff. So I don't think it's realistic to ever expect a hire to take place before National Signing Day, because guys are going to generally stay just to help their head coach out until they get everybody in the boat. I mean, here's a true story for you. Okay, so in the 1990s, the early 90s, there was this running back at Riverside High School named Brandon Bennett. Have you ever heard of him, Alex?
Yep.
So there was also a coach that had worked for Danny Ford by the name of Tommy West, who was currently at Tennessee, and he was recruiting Brandon Bennett heavily for Tennessee. And National Signing Day was approaching, which was the first Wednesday in February only back then. And the night before National Signing Day, Tommy West called Brandon Bennett and said, "I think you need to go to South Carolina." And he's like, "Why is that, coach?" And he's like, "Well, I can't tell you right now, but you'll know later in the week. You know, I spent a long time in South Carolina." Well, after National Signing Day, Sparky Woods hired Tommy West and Miles Aldridge, who had worked with Danny Ford to be the co-defensive coordinators in South Carolina. And so Tommy West already knew he was coming to South Carolina, but he wasn't announcing it until after National Signing Day. And that still goes on. So the only guys that are announcing right now are guys that are getting head coaching jobs, like Tosh Lupoy. He's got the Cal job. Okay, Chris Hampton is promoted to defensive coordinator, former Gamecock. Congrats to him. I think Dan Lanning will be running that defense. Brian Hartline, he's going to USF. Will Stein, he took the head coaching job at Kentucky. He's going to coach Oregon through the playoffs. I don't know if Taj Lupoy is or not. Doesn't look that way. But the coordinators that are getting head coaching jobs, they're announcing, and then all the head coaches that are moving, they announced like 4 SEC jobs got filled in like 15 minutes, and 3 of them in 5 minutes were announced. All Jimmy Sexton clients. And so you're not seeing, guys are not going to start moving until tomorrow, Friday, and next week. Alex, having said all of that, what's your take on the offensive coordinator search? J.C. Sherbert just mentioned on the Big Spur, Jason Beck. He's heard his name. Now, this is an interesting one, and I'm going to say this, and then I'm going to stop talking. It's going to be your turn. Jason Beck was a quarterback coach at Virginia with Bronco Mendenhall. Robert Anai was the offensive coordinator. They all left BYU and came to Virginia. Jason Beck played quarterback at BYU. He coached at BYU. Then he went to Virginia. Then Bronco Mendenhall retired. Robert Anai and Jason Beck went to Syracuse. Lenore Sellers then flipped his commitment to Syracuse. Robert Anai, for some reason, went to NC State to work for Dave Dorr, and that's where offensive coaches go to die. And Jason Beck is now with Kyle Whittingham, who I think is the most underrated head coach in the country. To me, he's top 5. Mm-hmm. But Whittingham almost retired last year. And so there's juice behind Jason Beck. I think he would be dynamic. Kevin Decker, you hear these other killer bees. You've got certainly Jeremiah Donati has a relationship with Kendall Briles. I mean, where could this thing be headed?
Good question. It's been one of those where it's been pretty quiet, just from the information standpoint out there. And the Becks one's interesting. That's been a name that was kind of thrown out there just when you're talking about names that would make sense. I kind of wondered, how tough it'd be to pull them from out there. So we'll see kind of what comes to fruition there. But there's, as you mentioned, there's the obvious connections there. Lenore Sellers is very familiar with Beck, guy that obviously he thought a lot of in the recruitment process. So you wonder what that would do if things do come to fruition. Not that we know that it is, but just if things came to fruition there. So that relationship is there, but it's been pretty quiet just on that front, and I'm interested to see. I didn't think it happened before signing day. Just I didn't think I think we may have said this on here before, but just the importance of this search for Shane Beamer. I think he had to take his time to make sure he gets the right answer, and I think it's one of those where from a search standpoint, he has to, with, like I said, just the importance, they had to make sure this one is the right hire, and however long that takes. And sometimes you got to wait on a coach too, just because there may be other things going on there too. But there's a lot of interesting names in this hire, and we'll see how much longer this one actually takes from a search standpoint. Because once you get into this, these next few weeks before the portal opens the 1st of January, you're going to want an offensive coordinator in there just so he can go ahead and get understand the players, and then player retention really starts getting underway.
No doubt. So as a broke clock's right twice a day, Andrew Harris has been announced now. But interesting, USC lists Aiden Harris at 6'3", 275. Ooh. And Alex, is it your understanding that these guys are early enrollees?
I think so. Yes, I believe so.
We know that some guys are not, like 5-star Darius Gray is not an early enrollee. Caden Ramsey is, I guess, stayed at Cross to play basketball. I'm not sure about Cusky Barnes or Zion Giles or KJ Johnson. But if Andrew Harris is 6'3", 275, and he's an early enrollee, I think him and Noah Clark could help you right off the bat. I just think Noah Clark, he's an early enrollee.
Yeah.
You get him in and reshape his body, and he's not. He's 6'4", 340, and he doesn't look like Nick Sharp, okay, or some of these other, Spur used to say, man, we just got a bunch of fat guys. I look over at the other sideline. They don't have fat guys. We got a bunch of fat guys. That's got to change. He doesn't look like a fat guy, 6'4", 340. He is a grown-ass man, and he can move. He reminds me of 93 right now. And they're both from North Carolina. They're both stronger than an ox. For whatever reason, it just took 93 longer to develop, but he had a hell of a year this year for South Carolina.
Yeah, and as far as Aiden Harris, like I think I mentioned earlier with him, like he's a guy when you look at his frame that you're like, okay, the speed's going to stay here, but there's a lot more that he can add on from a muscle standpoint. And kind of same with Noah Clark, like he's a guy that I think once he gets into that college weight room and nutrition program, like he can already move at the size that he's at right now, and once he gets into that, he's going to be able to move even more. So I think you have to like this interior defensive line portal high school haul for South Carolina just because of a numbers standpoint. You wanted to get some guys in there, but these two guys seems like, depending on what the portal looks like and how some of these year 1, year 2 guys kind of make a jump, I wonder how much of an impact Aiden Harris and those guys can make just because those guys are productive coming out of North Carolina, and you wonder how quickly that can translate.
Yeah, and I mean, that's just stacking guys on top of guys. Like I mentioned, those 3 guys that redshirted, Caleb Williams, Christian Ingram, and Xavier Hardy. I mean, what's the expectation for Hardy? You hear anything on him? Was it just he just needed to add strength and learn how to play SEC football?
I think it's all the above on that. I wondered I think it'd be difficult for JUCO guys coming into the SEC level just because it's a whole new kind of ball game. Just you say the same thing about high school, but really for JUCO too, it's just a whole new ball game. And I kind of wondered with him coming out of JUCO, out of East Mississippi, if he would need a year, just kind of get, especially having to play for a coach like Travian Robinson, who's going to be, right there with you the whole time. Like I wondered if it's going to be a year, and I thought maybe you get a little bit more production out of him, but it turns out like they were, from a rotation standpoint, they were okay there. They had the guys that they needed. So I think having this year is going to be good for him and something that he needs to build on in the summer into next year.
No doubt. So Shane Beamer's press conference is at 2:00. I mean, I almost texted you about an hour ago and just seeing if you wanted to wait and do it then, because then hopefully we'll know on everybody. But I mean, Duckworth could go to tomorrow. We know Julian Walker and Carson Baker are going until tomorrow. I think pretty much. So that's 10 guys. It was 14. The other 3, we know they have afternoon ceremonies. And then you're waiting on flip guys. And so I don't know what to expect from Beamer. His press conferences are certainly different than Will Muschamp. I remember one year we were all waiting on the big offensive lineman from Charlotte who wound up starting a bunch and playing for the Atlanta Falcons. And he had not announced. Clemson, Alabama had come in on him, and then Will Muschamp just is reading off the list, talking about guys, and he just rolls his name out. Any chance Shane Beamer does that with somebody today?
Not expecting it, but we'll see if there's something like that happens. But nothing that I'm expecting from that standpoint to happen.
All right, Alex, great stuff. As always, I can't thank you enough for being with us today on National Signing Day. And go ask Shane some questions, and I'm sure he's going to get asked about so how many questions in before he's asked about offensive coordinator search? Where would you set the over-under? Where would you set the over-under on that one?
2, and it may go under.
It could. So, and I mean, we'll see. Look, so I will say this. I have no idea how this thing's going to turn out with Duckworth. But I remember a few years ago, there was a guy named Nick Harbor who it was going to be South Carolina, and then it was going to be Oregon. And Steve Wiltfong was at 24/7. Then the phone bomb, that was where it was birthed. He put in a phone bomb for Nick Harbor to go to Oregon, and then he wound up signing with South Carolina. I'm not saying this is the same, but we may not know until tomorrow, Friday. Who knows? I mean, some of these things may just keep dragging out. And that's kind of weird because usually, you know, when you and I were talking about what time to start this thing, we thought everybody would be in by now.
Yeah.
So that just goes to show it's unpredictable, folks. Alex, be well, my friend. Hope you had a great Thanksgiving. I've had a tremendous week outside of the 3 hours in which my Tourette's really came out watching South Carolina and Clemson. So be well, and we'll hear what the head coach has to say at 2 p.m. Eastern, and we'll look forward to catching up with you down the road, my friend.
Always enjoy being on. Appreciate it.
All right. All right, that was Alex Jones from thebigspur.com. And so he and I both we've been tracking it, waiting on it. I've been up since early this morning. It's one of my favorite times of year. And so I just want to close with this. Okay, it's the holidays and family is the most important thing. And December the 3rd is a very special day to me, and it's also a very tragic day for me. My dad, Carl Parker Alsep, was born on December the 3rd, 1936. He didn't have a filter. You could be having a conversation with him and you'd think he was a Baptist minister. You could have a conversation with him 10 minutes later and you'd think he was a drill instructor from Paris Island. But he was a family man, and no dad is perfect. Sons and fathers have complicated relationships. We had a complicated relationship growing up because I was an only child and my mama just doted on me. And but I loved him. He loved me. There was nothing he wouldn't do for me. When I was in college, he went without a car for 3 weeks to pay to get my car fixed. He helped me move to Tampa, Florida when I got out of school. He set a great example of what a family man and a husband and a father should be. He worshiped the ground my mother walked on, and I can still remember him telling us that he loved us so much that he would charge the gates of hell with ice water to get us out, and he would have. He died in April of 2012. It was the same day as the spring game at South Carolina. In fact, I left the spring game and got the call. He was in hospice, and he passed away about 5 minutes after I got there. And my Uncle Tom, my dad's oldest brother, told me he was waiting on me to get there so I could tell him goodbye and assure him my mom would be okay. I was lucky, luckier than most. I had two men that were just like fathers to me. The second was my mama's big brother, my Uncle Carl. She loved him so much, she married a man with the same name. I had Uncle Carl, and my dad's name was Carl. Carl Kenneth Thomas. Most people around Liberty called him CK. He's one of the coolest cats I ever met in my life. He drove a Cadillac. He always had a money clip in his front pocket. That's why I got one in my front pocket. He taught me how to play the guitar. He taught me how to hustle pool. He taught me everything my dad and my mom didn't. He loved me just like a son. He never married. He never had any children. And he passed away on December the 3rd, 1995. And so it's a bittersweet day for me. It's probably going to be a bittersweet day for the Gamecocks. But family, man, it's the most important thing. In my family, I grew up in the same house with my grandparents, maternal grandparents, my Uncle Carl, and my mom and dad. There was so much love, and family just wasn't the most important thing, is the only thing. Just like Al Davis said, winning's not important, winning is the only thing. Or maybe that's Vince Lombardi. But I remember them both and remember the best of them, and it brings a smile to my face now before it brings a tear to my eye. And so cherish your family, cherish your loved ones. I tell everybody that still has their parents, cherish every opportunity you get to be with them, and let them know you love them, because I never got to tell my uncle goodbye. I left home Thanksgiving night to go back to Goose Creek. We had a scrimmage on Friday. We had a preseason tournament at Stall High School on Monday. He kept asking me what I wanted for Christmas, and I couldn't bring myself to tell him. I just wanted him to be around for Christmas. And Monday we played our first game. We won. Came back to my condo, and it was nothing. My roommate was a college assistant at Charleston Southern, Mark DeBarros. Shout out to him. One of the greatest dudes I ever known. He was high school teammates with Billy Donovan. And it was nothing for our phone to ring. But, man, that night, something just hit the pit of my stomach. And when I heard who was on the phone, because one of the funniest things about my dad, he was in the bed every night at 8:30, and he was wearing his tidy whities. Okay. White t-shirt, white skivvies. That was it. Every night. Always. And I heard his voice on the phone. And I asked him, "Is it Mama?" And he said, "No, son, it's your Uncle Carl." And he was over at a friend's house. Anybody that's from Norris knows Wob Case and Wob's Cafe. They're playing music. Wob used to be in my Uncle Carl's band. They played all the big NASCAR events, Darlington, Daytona, you name it. And they brought him back, but his brain had been deprived of oxygen. He had a DNR. They didn't know it. And so the next day, that Tuesday morning, my mom, they took him off life support and he died. And I didn't get to talk to him until I got home to the funeral home. But I know he heard me. He cheated death. He had his first heart attack in 1971. And the doctors told us we'd be lucky if he lived 5 years. He lived 25 years. He gave his life to Christ. He gave his testimony everywhere he went. He played his guitar and sang at Golden Creek Baptist Church in between Norris and Liberty. Garland Centel baptized him and me at that church. And I knew he heard every word I said, and I know he's looking down on me today, and he's happy as he can be because he's with the two women he loved the most, his mom and his sister. And with that, I'll say God bless all of you And go Gamecocks. And if something crazy happens, I may do another one of these. So subscribe to the YouTube channel. We'll have the Garnet and Black Town Hall tonight at 7 p.m. If something crazy happens, I'll be back after Shane Beamer. Women's basketball tomorrow night at number 22, Louisville, South Carolina's men. Sad. That's another podcast, men's sports at South Carolina. Go Cox. God bless all of you in this holiday season. I'm out of here.